Could you train every day for 1,000 days for 3 years straight? Mas Oyama did that. No breaks, no excuses. And from that came Kyokushin Karate and the 1,000 day rule, a path to an unbreakable mind. Let's explore how you can apply that to your life. Let's go. Most people today can't even stick to a habit for 21 days. Mas Oyama did almost 1,000, and from that he created Kyokushin Karate, one of the toughest, most disciplined martial arts in the world. But his story isn't just about karate. It's about building a spirit so unbreakable that no hardship, no pain, no obstacle could bend the will. Today, we're going to explore his time in the mountains, the philosophy of Kyokushin, and most importantly, how you can apply these lessons in your life right now. So after World War II, Japan was in ruin. Cities were shattered. Resources were scarce, and people were struggling to rebuild both physically and spiritually. Among them was a young man named Masatsu Oyama. Around 2023, he was restless, directionless. He was hungry for meaning. He had already trained in martial arts, judo and karate. And while quite talented, he felt empty. The martial arts he studied had become too much about the sport of it, too much about surface level practicing, and he wanted something raw, something more real, like what he would have seen in witnessing war. So he made a radical decision. He exiled himself to the mountains. Oyama dedicated himself to total isolation and training. His routine was brutal. Each morning he woke at dawn and began days, hours of conditioning, punching trees, using trees as makiwara as his punching bag until the bark peeled away and his knuckles became hard like stone, bleeding into the dirt. He kicked logs and rocks until they cracked. He practiced shadow boxing against waterfalls, learning to visualize combat and working against nature itself. And when his body screamed, "Stop," he then meditated under the cold waterfalls and mastered his fear and discomfort. He committed to 1,000 days, nearly 3 years. That's a very glamorous version of that. It didn't quite work out like that, but that was his promise to himself, and that's what he tried to achieve. You can look at older episodes that I've done or look this up. He had to come down off the mountain and go back and find sponsors, and he had to live. But that was the point. One of the things is that while he was there, he learned it wasn't glamorous. Loneliness gnawed at him. Hunger and exhaustion tested his will, and there were moments when he wanted to quit, to return to comfort. More than once, he nearly left the mountain. And in fact, he had a friend or a student or whatever that came and trained with him, and that person wound up leaving Oyama to his business. But anytime he wanted to abandon his promise to himself, he remembered the words of his mentor, So Nechu: strength comes from the struggle you don't escape. I'll say that again. Strength comes from the struggle you don't escape. We can find other thoughts like this in Stoic philosophy, like The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. But Oyama realized that quitting was the easy way. Enduring was the only way to forge something truly unbreakable. Later in his life, he put into words, "One becomes a beginner after 1,000 days of training. One becomes a master after 10,000 days of practice." Right? Like what Bruce Lee says, I fear not the man that's practiced 10,000 kicks, but I truly fear the man that's practiced one kick 10,000 times. That self-exile was his personal crucible, the fire that burned away any weakness and forged the spirit of Kyokushin. It's that little story there about that is like that's the core of Kyokushin. Okay, so let's talk about some of those principles. When Oyama was finally came down from the mountain, he brought something new into the world, and he called it Kyokushin, the ultimate truth. This is what we say. Kyokushin wasn't just a karate style, it was his philosophy, okay? His lived experience turned into a system. And at that system's heart, one strike, certain death. One strike, certain death. It doesn't just sound cool, it is cool. Now that sounds extreme, but it's not just about violence, it's about intent, okay? So he taught that every moment, every action that you do should be done with complete focus. No hesitation, no half effort, whether it's a punch, a kick, or making a simple decision, you need to be decisive. Kyokushin absorbs this 1,000-day rule as its crucial backbone, right? If you weren't willing to dedicate the years to the training, you had no right to expect results. Progress is measured in sweat, bruises, time, not quick wins. This stands in stark contrast to our comfort culture that we live in today. We want shortcuts, hacks, instant gratification. I mean, we want the secret morning routine, the pill, the shot. But Oyama's philosophy, the Kyokushin philosophy, is the opposite. If you want mastery, endure. Work through the difficult things. And he lived it. He has a litany of feats that aren't necessarily stunts. They kind of look that way nowadays. But they're demonstrations of discipline. So like when you see modern sport karate and people doing breaking, it is 9 times out of 10 a bit cheesy. But they're missing the point. The point is to demonstrate your discipline and your ability to do difficult things. That's really what that's about. So like his fighting bulls, yeah, that's the thing. Breaking their horn with his bare hands with shuto. He had 100-man fight, 100-man kumite, fought 100 black belts in succession. I think it was 2 or 3 minute rounds. And they were legitimate fights. And he made it through. Few people have ever done that. And Oyama did it more than once. He walked the path. That's not just about like showmanship, right? They're proof of what happens when discipline and intent are pushed to their absolute limits. Kyokushin is known as the strongest karate because it's real. Because to make it to black belt in Kyokushin, you have to test through pain and endurance and truth, self-truth. So what are some modern applications of this craziness, right? What does Oyama's philosophy mean to us walking around in 2025? Most of us aren't capable of just escaping to the mountains for 3 years. We can't fight bulls. But that 1,000-day rule matters now more than ever. We live in a world obsessed with speed and convenience and the easy rate. 30-day challenges, 5-minute hacks, morning routines, overnight stuff. But the 1,000-day rule reminds us real mastery takes years. It takes real sweat and practice. Take fitness, for example. Most people sign up for programs in January, quit by February. That's literally a gym meme, is that after the new year, the gyms are full. And then by February, they're empty. Kyokushin, or Oyama would tell you, give it 1,000 days. 3 years of consistent effort, not perfect days, not all days where you win, just show up for 1,000 days. And that is how real life-altering transformation happens for the rest of your life. Think about business. We're bombarded by stories of AI millionaires, insta millionaires, billionaires. But the truth, the ones who last build their businesses brick by brick. Oyama didn't become the strongest karate person in a week. He built himself over his lifetime, strike by strike, day after day. That's the blueprint. That's the Kyokushin 1,000-day blueprint. Relationships, same rule applies. It's easy to show up when it's convenient. The real test is being there every day for your partner, for your kids, for your friend, even when it's hard, even when they're testing you. Trust isn't built on these grand gestures and gifts. It's built with consistent presence in their lives over years. So how do we apply these principles? First, we commit to the long game. Stop dabbling. Choose one thing that matters and give it 1,000 days. I have so many people that come into my gym and after a few days ask me if I could coach them to a fight. Could they do a fight, a kickboxing fight or something? And my typical response is, unless they're like already a fighter, my typical response is, yeah, sure. Come to every kickboxing class. Definitely don't miss sparring classes for a month. And that's like 2-3 classes a week, 3 hours. Most people come solid for a week and then they fade out. Most people don't last half a month. And that's my signal that they're not ready or not capable. Second, eliminate retreat. Oyama didn't give himself the option to quit. Like Cortez burning the boats, he removed escape routes. You know the story of Cortez where he came over to the continent, North American continent, what is now the U.S., and burned the boats that his men came over on so that they couldn't so that going home wasn't an option. They had to stay in and make it work, burn the boats. So what if you treated your goals that same way? There's no retreat, no surrender, right? Third, embrace discomfort. Navy SEALs will tell you embrace the suck. I have patches. There's probably one in here somewhere. Kyokushin seeks hardship. Oyama sought hardship because he knew that's where growth is. That's where the real growth is. And for us, it's the same. You read a lot about cold showers, cold plunges, right? Tough workouts, doing the hard conversation, doing the focused work, embracing it and living in it. Those are the 3 pillars, the 3 principles, okay? Here's the encouraging part. You don't need a mountain. You don't need to disappear into the cold mountains. You don't need to go get under a freezing cold waterfall. What you need is a system. You need a personal dojo where you can build your daily habits. That's where discipline is built in 2025. So live with the warrior spirit now, today. Let's circle back where we started. Most people today can't stick to a habit for 21 days. But what if you aimed for 1,000? That's what Oyama did. And he built Kyokushin Karate. And his discipline wasn't about karate. It wasn't about trophies or the titles. It was about forging a real unbreakable spirit in mind, body, spirit. Right? He didn't just prop himself up so he looked good for the gram, for his YouTube videos. He did it for real. And all the rewards came from it, from him just being that way. One of my recent, some of my students were recently promoted to brown belt, and they've been training for 6-7 years. I told them the way to get to black belt is to just start living life like a black belt, right? You're not going to rise to the day of your test for black belt. You're not just going to rise to that challenge, right? You're going to have lived that way in our school for a full year. You're going to have lived that way and walked that path for a full year in order to make it through the crucible that we go through for our black belt in our style. So I said, you want to be black belt? Stop living and training like brown belts and start living and training like black belts. And that's how you get there. Because when the day comes, you will already be that. And you'll just walk through the door. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one area of your life, fitness, learning, creative skill, whatever. Something you always wanted to master. Don't think in weeks or months. Think in years. And commit to your own 1,000-day journey. Because Oyama has shown us that something powerful is in that. Mastery isn't about talent. It isn't about shortcuts and quick fixes. It's about endurance, enduring. It's about showing up day after day, even when it sucks, even when it's boring, even when no one's watching you. 3 years, no excuses. If you want to forge that skill, if you want to forge that unbreakable spirit, start now, right? The best time to start was 3 years ago. The next best time is right now. So with that, go out, find your 1,000-day challenge, and get after it.